It's time for the real Jonathan Smith Show. This is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? It's the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Off to a hot start today. As you can tell, got a big show lined up. Zack Gray is set to join the show at 11 o'clock. We're going to talk NFL, college football, all the stuff that Zack Gray and I normally talk about. He's going to give out some killer bets as well. It's a big day, though, for the Indianapolis Colts and their fan base, really that organization as a whole, because Chris Ballard is set to go to the podium any second now, right? We have his official press conference happening today. Hopefully the media around here will actually ask him good, hard, tough-nosed questions. We'll see whether or not that happens. I'm going to do my best to cover that throughout the show. But I want to start with Chris Ballard today. And, you know, we do this awesome segment here on the Real Jonathan Smith Show not every Friday, but most Fridays I come out and I do a Fun List Friday. And in honor of Chris Ballard's press conference today, where people are hopefully going to rip him to shreds, something that I know, we all know, as a matter of fact, that is going to come up is his draft record, because he's the best drafter in the NFL. And so I decided to take the time and to go through his draft history and identify the best draft picks from the Chris Ballard era. As a matter of fact, we're going to do the 10 best draft picks from the Chris Ballard era. And I've got them tiered off as well. I don't think that you can argue the top 3 picks from the Ballard draft classes have to be Jonathan Taylor. That's who I have at 1, because he's, one of the 5 best running backs in the NFL. I think the second best draft pick from the Chris Ballard era is Michael Pittman Jr., tough guy who plays through literally everything. It's really honestly impressive, the fact that he played through a messed up back, right? That guy is tough. He's a good player. He's produced with not very good quarterbacks. The one year he had a halfway decent one, Gardner Minshew. He put up over 100 receptions for over 1,000 yards. He's a really good receiver. And then the third best draft selection from the Chris Ballard era is Quentin Nelson. He's probably the best player, but since he's an offensive guard, positional importance is just lower. So I lowered him here on the list. So I think those are the 3 best draft picks in the history of Chris Ballard here with the Indianapolis Colts, right? If you want to rearrange the order, that's fine. But I do think those guys go 1, 2, 3 in some order. Okay. Next down on the list, right? The second tier of solid draft picks, not going to change a franchise, though, are guys like Josh Downs, okay, Bernard Raymond. The fact that he found an offensive tackle that can legitimately play offensive tackle, like if Bernard Raymond is your left tackle, you feel pretty good about it. Usually, you got to draft those guys in the first round. The fact that Chris Ballard was able to find one in the third round, to give him some credit, it's pretty impressive. Next on the list, I've got Kwity Paye. I know people have been disappointed in Kwity Paye, but, 8.5 sacks again this year. He missed a couple games. Look, 8.5 sacks, he's top 25 in the NFL in sacks. He was the 22nd overall pick. I'm not going to expect to get Nick Bosa level production. A guy who was I believe he was the number 1 overall pick. I'm not going to expect that out of Kwity Paye, who was taken 22nd in his draft class. So good, solid pick. Not going to change your franchise. Also not going to, ruin your franchise either. Next, Dio Adangbo, pretty similar, solid pick. Not great, not terrible, just kind of hanging around there in the middle. Good, solid player that would play on just about any other roster in the NFL. I've got Will Fries on here, the right guard, who was awesome this year before he got hurt. Chris Ballard found him in the 7th round. That's pretty impressive. Anytime you can find a starting caliber anything that late in the draft, it has to be acknowledged. So I've got Will Fries at the bottom of that. Solid draft pick. Not going to change your franchise for better or for worse, though. So that gets us to number 8. And then I've got my last tier, I had to find 2 more guys tier. I've got Shaq Leonard on here. Look, his career was short. but he was really good when he played. I don't think that anyone can really deny that. And then the last guy is Zaire Franklin, because he is a, starting linebacker in the NFL. He did lead the NFL in tackles. As much beef as I feel like, I have with Zaire Franklin, I do have to acknowledge that the fact that he's a 7th round pick who now starts and is one of the leading tacklers in the NFL year in and year out, it is impressive. And as I was putting together this Fun List Friday, trying to build Chris Ballard up so that I could later swoop in and knock him down, I noticed something. Only one of these guys, only one of the top 10 draft picks in the history of the Chris Ballard era was a first-round pick. Jonathan Taylor was in the 2nd round. Michael Pittman Jr., 2nd round. Quentin Nelson, 1st round, obviously. Josh Downs, 3rd round. Bernard Raymond, 3rd round. Kwity Paye, late 1st, so I guess there's 2 on here. Daiwa Dangbo in the 2nd round. Will Fries in the 7th. Shaq Leonard in the 2nd. And then Zaire Franklin in the 7th. That's problematic. Your best draft picks have got to be your first-round picks. When you build through the draft, you cannot afford to miss on that many first-round picks. Chris Ballard has had 5 first-round picks during his time as the general manager of the Indianapolis Colts, and only 2 of them make the list of his top 10 draft picks. When you build exclusively through the NFL draft, you cannot miss on your first-round picks. Now, to be fair, Laiatu Latu, way too early. We don't know if he's going to be good or not. Maybe. We'll see. Anthony Richardson, though, doesn't really look great. Kwity Paye, solid player. Quentin Nelson, great player at a position that is important, but not of the utmost importance. And Malik Hooker was not good. That's why he's not here anymore. Okay, going 1 for 5 in terms of drafting dominant players in the first round is not good. He's drafted 1 dominant guy in Quentin Nelson, a solid guy in Kwity Paye, and then a bunch of or definitely not going to works. Okay? Or I guess I should correct myself. You can do that. You can miss on that many first-round picks. You just have to use free agency to supplement those missed draft picks, and Chris Ballard does not do that. Look, I think it's incredibly hard to draft good players, especially consistently. It is so incredibly difficult to find good players in the draft. If it was easy, then everyone would do it, okay? And because it's so hard, I just think it's absolutely imperative that when you rebuild, you have to use free agency. If you don't, you're playing the game with a hand tied behind your back. And so as we go into this Chris Ballard press conference today, and I'm hoping clips get posted to Twitter pretty quickly. If you see somebody you want to tag me in it, please do, because I'm on the lookout for him today. We're going to stop different parts of the show to address different Chris Ballard statements. I just, the one thing that I really want to hear him say today is that he was wrong and he's going to start utilizing free agency a little bit more. Look, I'm wrong all the time. Okay. So are you. You just don't have everything that you say recorded into a microphone for 5 hours a day. Okay. And I think it's really important to admit to mistakes and be willing to change things. And I'm hoping that we see that from Chris Ballard today. I doubt that we will. He seems pretty hard-headed. It seems like he has his head stuck in the sand. And I don't really expect for that to change much going forward. Now, speaking of change, I have to admit, Notre Dame, it's a good football team. Do I think they're better than Ohio State? No, but I don't think anyone really does. Are they better than Texas? I don't know. We'll see. We probably won't, because Ohio State should win tonight. But I think the most impressive thing about Notre Dame last night is they embodied a lot of things that the Indianapolis Colts do not. The toughness and the resilience of Notre Dame was on full display last night. Look, that first half was ugly. Okay, those 3 points that Notre Dame got right before the half allowing them to score 10 points in that middle eight. They did a pretty similar thing to Georgia, right? They scored right before the half, got the ball back, and then scored again, right? That's a 14-point swing when, Georgia didn't have the ball, and we saw the same thing last night. They had a 10-point swing where, Penn State never really even had an opportunity to possess the football, right? So those 3 points right before half were big, but even aside from that, I was just like, Penn State feels like they're in control of this. They're really generating a pass rush. Abdul Carter was an absolute menace off the edge for Penn State. They were running the football really effectively. At one point, they were averaging 5 yards a carry against a good Notre Dame defense. The issue, and has been the issue for Penn State and James Franklin really the entire time that he's been there, is they just don't have the weapons on the outside. I talked yesterday before the game, talked about how just like both of those teams were incredibly similar, right? Want to run the football, don't throw the ball super great, all that kind of stuff. And, the difference in that game was Notre Dame's players on the edge made more plays than Penn State's. And all that stuff happened in the second half. Riley Leonard continues to be incredibly tough and competitive. But we have to talk about Marcus Freeman. And, the whole halftime adjustments thing is something that I think is greatly blown out of proportion. I think coaches make adjustments as soon as they need to. I don't think that they see an issue on the first drive and go, okay, we'll change that here in 45 minutes of game time or whatever it is, or I guess 25 minutes of game time. I don't think that they do that. I think that their offense or defense comes off the field and they say, hey, they're doing this. We didn't expect that. So instead of doing this, we're going to do this to counter it. Okay. And I don't know what Marcus Freeman said at halftime, but things changed really quickly when they came out in the second half. They put together an incredible drive. They tied it at 10, and the offense just kind of rolled from there. And the more that I listen to Marcus Freeman and the more that I watch him coach, the more I like him and the more he reminds me of Dan Campbell. I think he is a calmer version of the Detroit Lions head coach. Okay, he's a former player turned head coach, a guy who played a really physical position, right? Marcus Freeman played linebacker. Dan Campbell was a blocking tight end, all right? You got to be incredibly physical and tough to play those positions. And when you watch Notre Dame, they are physical and they are tough. When you watch the Lions, they are physical and they are tough, right? And I think part of that is because Marcus Freeman is a former player. And he has instilled that physicality and that toughness and that competitiveness in his team. I think the other thing that about Marcus Freeman that reminds me of Dan Campbell is how much he loves his players. ESPN was ESPN there last night, and they were talking about how he's going to be the first black head coach ever to coach in a national title game, which I don't think anyone really cares about. And I love his response. But I think my favorite thing about it was he's like, this isn't really about me. This is about my players, right? And he put it all back on them. And if you watch Dan Campbell and the way that he addresses his team and the way that he talks to them, it's all about the Lions players when you talk to Dan Campbell, okay? And there's clearly, from Marcus Freeman, a love and a passion for his players. He loves those guys. You can just tell, I know of some different guys who played college sports where their college head coach, for a lack of a better term, just kind of used them and then moved on. Didn't really care about them as long as they won. That doesn't seem like the kind of guy that Marcus Freeman is. One of my favorite clips of Dan Campbell is he's crying at practice. And he's like, guys, you guys are all that I think about. I'm here for y'all. And it's really moving, actually. And so they both have that similarity of just the passion and the love that they have for their players. Marcus Freeman's also incredibly passionate about football. He's just not quite as loud about it. I feel like he's a pretty emotional guy. He's just much more tame, right? Whereas, Dan Campbell's super loud, super not over the top, but you know what I mean? Just you can see his passion. Okay. And it's really impressive what Marcus Freeman has done. Brian Kelly, the most overrated coach in all of college football, left Notre Dame because he didn't think that you could win the big one there. And meanwhile, he's down at LSU, where you can definitely win the big one. That place is designed for you to go and win the big one. There's, all sorts of, pipeline recruiting down there, top tier athletes in Louisiana and and East Texas. Okay. Like LSU is a place where you show up and you win 9 games every year just because you're at LSU. That is the way that program is built and designed. And the location of it is absolutely perfect. Okay. You don't have to be super smart to get into LSU like you do for Notre Dame. So Brian Kelly leaves because he simply knew that he was not a good enough coach to take Notre Dame to the levels that they aspired to be at. And they promote Marcus Freeman, who was the defensive coordinator under Brian Kelly. They promote him, and there have been some really rough patches, losing to Marshall, losing to Northern Illinois earlier in the season, losing to 3-9 Stanford. But he just kept working. And the toughness and the competitiveness and the resilience that Marcus Freeman himself has and has helped, put on the rest of his team, it's been on full display throughout the entire thing. He has done an excellent job taking Notre Dame to the next level, and it's because he has instilled toughness and a resiliency and a competitiveness in his team. And it starts with the fact that he went out and he got Riley Leonard, a guy who embodies all of those things himself. Okay, just really impressive from Notre Dame last night. Bad news is they're probably going to have to play Ohio State, who's favored by 5.5 tonight. They play Ohio State. Sorry, I'm not giving them a chance. But if they play Texas, I will. That's a promise. So congrats again to Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman. They played a really good game last night, battling back after being down at halftime. Tonight, we've got another game that I hope is really good, a game that has the potential to be really good. Texas and Ohio State. I don't know if you missed it last night. Braden Smith put on an absolute masterclass against Dylan Harper and the rest of this Rutgers team. I'm going to touch on that a little bit. The NFL playoffs start tomorrow. Indiana basketball plays tomorrow. Purdue plays Sunday. Zack Gray is going to join me at 11 o'clock, and we're going to talk about all sorts of things. It's going to be just an absolutely fantastic show in every sense of the words. And obviously throughout the show, Chris Ballard, his oh, there it goes. Oh, I'm behind. That's why. Chris Ballard has been at the podium for like 10 minutes. If you're catching it, and if you see clips from Chris Ballard where he says outlandish things, please tag me so that I can grab those and play those on the air. I'm going to be doing my best to cover his press conference throughout the entire show. So please send those things my way. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, hopefully I'll have some audio from Chris Ballard, or at least some quotes and different things that he said throughout the press conference today. We'll talk a little Texas, Ohio State. We'll talk the Braden Smith masterclass from last night. A whole bunch of stuff to get to on an awesome Friday here on Indy's Sports Ticket.
Unadulterated sports talk with unfiltered takes. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
Thanks for tuning in to the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you're having a nice day. Happy Friday. The Chris Ballard press conference is in full swing, and throughout the show, I'm going to be pulling quotes from it and all that fun stuff. To open with some notes from the Chris Ballard presser. He cut his hair, which I find incredibly interesting because, well, he said that he wasn't going to cut it until he won the Super Bowl. And unless I'm dumb, unless I just completely missed this, I have not seen the Indianapolis Colts win the Super Bowl during his time. Haven't even seen him win a division or a playoff game in like 5 years. So I don't know. Very, very interesting opening to the press conference there, seeing Chris Ballard sit down with a nicely cut head, which is probably good. I think he looks better with a nice little haircut. But hey, whatever. But so far, the headlines from his press conference include him saying that they will add competition to the quarterback room in part because Anthony Richardson hasn't been able to stay healthy for a full 17-game schedule, which is incredibly true. He had another quote where someone asked him, I think, directly about the play of Anthony Richardson. He said that it can't be completely stamped, that he knew it would be a bit of a roller coaster when they took Anthony Richardson because he was so raw, which is a fair response. But I think his note on saying that they need, competition in the quarterback room, it's something that I've been saying. What up, Chris? Actually, I really miss Chris today. Usually he's locked in here on the real Jonathan Smith Show, just listening to everything that I have to say. But so I appreciate him acknowledging the injury health issues with Anthony Richardson. I appreciate him saying that he is going to add competition to the quarterback room. That is going to be one of the best things for Anthony Richardson going forward. Okay? Seriously. It's the best thing for him. It is, because competition, it just pushes you a little bit more and it helps you get better. Okay. Hopefully, this will also inspire Anthony Richardson to play when he's hurt, because one of the worst experiences is you get hurt, some other guy plays, and you never get your spot back. Happens to guys all the time. And it's just not a fun experience at all. So very glad to hear that Chris Ballard is going to add competition in the quarterback room. With that being said, I'm taking everything that he says today with a grain of salt. The man cannot be trusted. He lied about his hair. Who lies about your hair? Seriously. But seriously, though, I don't trust anything he says. When he does it, I will believe it. Another thing that he said that I greatly appreciate is he said that, quote, right now, we are not close. I want to make this really clear. Close is losing on the last play of the Super Bowl. 8-9, that's not close. So glad he said that. If he had said we're so close, I'd have been so upset. I'd have been really upset. Actually, that's not true, because I've got we're so close on my Ballard bingo card. I'm going to go through and watch the whole thing from start to finish later. But he's exactly right. He finally said the thing that everybody knows. Everyone knows that the Indianapolis Colts are nowhere close to winning a Super Bowl. Nowhere close. They are eons away from doing that, right? There's issues at the quarterback position. The offensive line just continues to get older and older. The core of the team continues to get older and older. Okay. And, it's just the roster just is not in a great spot, which Chris Ballard, to his credit, acknowledged as well. He called it a mistake to run it back with the same roster, which, who would have thought that a 9-8 roster would be like 11-6 the next year? Come on now. If you have a 9-8 team and you bring everybody back, chances are you're going to wind up hovering around 9-8 once again. Okay. And he admitted it. He said, quote, I didn't create enough competition on the roster. That directly falls on my shoulders. I was wrong. He said it twice, which kind of makes me feel like he's putting on an act just a little bit. But I do appreciate that he's not sitting here being incredibly arrogant about everything that is going on. I appreciate that he's at least attempting to fall on the sword. Do I believe a word that he says? Absolutely not. When he actually makes changes, that is when I will believe him. Okay. Because, like, why would we trust him after 8 years of the exact same thing over and over and over again? Seriously, like, why would we do that? Like, why would I trust that guy? So those are the highlights so far from the Chris Ballard press conference. As more quotes and things come out, I will continue to, grab those and tell you what is being said by Chris Ballard, all the bull crap that he's trying to sell everybody. Moving on. Texas, they play Ohio State tonight. This game's pretty straightforward. I think I know who everyone's going to pick. Texas playing Ohio State. I'm taking Ohio State. I think everyone in the country is, because Chip Kelly finally figured out that the strength of his offense is with these wide receivers. Texas, just an incredible defense, the most underrated unit left in this college football playoff. But, this Ohio State offense is absolutely loaded. Absolutely loaded. Okay. And when it comes to, Ohio State, like, you have to score points to beat them. And the question for Texas, and it's, an unfair question, honestly, is like, can Quinn Ewers and Steve Sarkisian live up to the expectations that have been set before them all year that they have not met once? Okay. Because, look, I expect for them to continue to struggle because they're playing against this Ohio State defense that's also loaded with talent. And if Texas can't move the ball and consistently score against Arizona State, then why in the world would I expect them to move the ball and consistently score against Ohio State? Okay. Texas is wildly talented. The best version of Texas can beat anyone in the country, including Ohio State. The issue is we haven't seen that from them all year. Okay, they have consistently squeaked out wins. They have consistently played to the level of their competition. Okay, that's who Texas has been. And then you look at Ohio State, who as of late has blown out teams. They have not played to the level of their competition. They've taken care of business, while Texas continues to play to the level of their competition. Now, if that happens tonight, then we're in for an awesome game. Okay, we are. And I really hope that when it comes to, Texas and Ohio State tonight, we have an awesome game. We've got a little bit of audio from Chris Ballard talking about what a mistake it was to run it back with the exact same team from last year. Here's Chris Ballard talking about running it back.
And look, I'm emotional and I care about.
Chris Ballard right there talking about just, the lack of competition on the roster, the fact that it was a mistake to running back. Once again, who would have thought that, you know, doing it again with the 9-8 team would lead to, a better result. Like I kind of understand what he's saying there, talking about how, you think that players would be a little bit more motivated after barely missing the playoffs and yada, 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 all that good jazz. But, that's just not the way that it works. Like those guys are playing hard all year long, one way or the other. And jeez, man. What an idiot. What an idiot. There's no other way to really say it. Yeah, just absolutely brutal from Chris Ballard there. I just want to see change. Like, we're going to hear a whole bunch of stuff like that all day today. I messed up. It was a mistake. We're not close. I was wrong. All those things are being said right now, and we're going to continue to hear that from him throughout the entire press conference. He's going to fall on the sword. He fell on the sword last year. And, it's just absolutely brutal listening to him talk about all of this. More audio from him, hopefully, when we come back, because I want all the audio from him that I can get, because, I don't like reading quotes. I think it's better when it comes directly from him and we get to hear him say outlandish things. Even though everything I think that he said right there was true, there was a lack of competition on the roster. Gotta love him kissing the butt of DeForest Buckner throughout that. I just love that he was man enough to say it. So, Chris Ballard at his finest. This is his element. Okay, just trying to put out as much BS as possible to appease people. Once again, I'll believe it when he actually makes some changes. So when we come back here in about 4 minutes, hopefully we'll have some more quotes and things from Chris Ballard, Colts general manager, who's still in the middle of his press conference right now. If we don't, then we'll continue moving on. Braden Smith put on an absolute masterclass last night. Pacers, they play tonight. Indiana, they play tomorrow. Purdue plays on Sunday. We got the NFL playoffs starting up here soon. Zack Gray, he's going to join the show coming up at 11 o'clock, and it's all going to be good. So make sure you don't go anywhere. We'll be right back here in about 4 minutes talking more Colts.
I did.
And so now what?
Good question.
Often imitated, never duplicated. The real Jonathan Smith Show. This is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
We got stuff rolling in from the Chris Ballard press conference. As more audio and stuff pops up, we're going to have it all for you right here on Indy Sports Ticket on both my show, The Real Jonathan Smith Show, which you're listening to right now. We'll have you more of it during the Dan Dockett Show as well. Now, I think two of the big things that we've heard from Chris Ballard so far throughout this, press conference is that, one, we are going to have some sort of quarterback competition. They're going to bring somebody in to challenge Anthony Richardson, which has to be the right choice for two reasons. First and foremost, the guy can't stay healthy, and that is the reason that Chris Ballard cited. Makes sense to me. Second reason is because he completed 48% of his passes this year, and that simply is not good enough to, be a starting quarterback in the NFL and win games. Honestly, the fact that they went 8-9 with Joe Flacco and a quarterback and Anthony Richardson, who only completed 48% of his passes, is kind of impressive. I won't lie about it. The other thing that we've gotten from this Chris Ballard press conference is honestly the total opposite of what I thought that we would get and what I think a lot of people thought that we would get. It's Chris Ballard. It's Chris Ballard. So it's hard to really know whether or not to believe him, but this is him explaining his errors in building this roster. And honestly, you listen to him, and I got some issues with it. John Buzzard, awesome listener to this show, he chimed in on it. I'll read you his comments when it's over. But here's Chris Ballard talking about the mistakes that he made in running it back with this roster.
Good question. Here's where the hardest thing to do is evaluate your own team. I think this is across the board in the NFL. And look, I'm emotional and I care about our players. And I think sometimes I've let that bleed into how I built the team. All right. And coming off a year last year when we were 9-8, I thought we were playing really good football at the end of the season. Lost a tough game at the end of Houston. Could have gone either way. And I'm thinking, okay, we're trending up. And instead of really creating competition throughout and throwing new blood into the locker room, new players into the locker room, I said, you know what, we're going to run it back. That was a mistake. It was. I think Buckner said it. Buckner had some comments that I thought were just excellent, where about complacency, about ego, and he's right. Buck is right. Man enough to say it, one, which I love, and two, his assessment was right, and that falls on me. It does. I bet on that we could bring players back and they would be as upset about what happened at the end of the season last year that they'd want to rectify it. And at the end of the day, we were not able to. And I didn't do a good enough job creating enough competition throughout the roster and keep everybody on edge. Look,
Chris Ballard right there talking about the roster and the mistake that it was to run back this entire roster that went 9-8 last year. It's pretty incredible. A roster that went 9-8, pretty average last year, went 8-9 this year. Pretty incredible, honestly. Geez, Chris Ballard. John Buzzard chimed in. If you want to be part of the show, head over to YouTube, subscribe to Indy Sports Ticket, jump into the chat. You can also tweet at me on Twitter at __ Jonathan Smith. John Buzzard weighing in saying comments by Ballard shows he knows his deficiencies. At least he's now self-aware. seems humbled a bit and knows he can't trust players. Can he now be more cutthroat? Because the hardest thing to do as a GM can't be evaluating your own team. John, I think you're exactly right. On a day like today, I really wish that I could take callers, but, I need a producer to do that. Anyway, John, I think you're exactly right. The best thing you should be at, the thing that Chris Ballard should be able to do best is evaluate his own team. If you can't evaluate your own team, as Chris Ballard said was the hardest thing for him to do, how in the world do you know what positions to draft? How in the world do you know what free agents to go get? You have to be able to sit back and evaluate your team and remove the emotion from it. I love the movie Moneyball. It's my favorite movie ever. I have a list. It's number one, and it will probably never be topped. One of my favorite things about that movie is Brad Pitt, who plays the general manager of the A's when they went on their crazy run and they won, 27 games in a row or whatever it was, is he never hung out with the team, right? He never got on planes or anything like that because it made guys easier to cut or to send down and to do all of those different things. You can't be emotionally attached to your team because you have to cut them or trade them or do whatever, bench them, whatever it is. Okay. And, Chris Ballard said it himself. He said, I'm too emotional. That is a major issue. You cannot be emotional in a role where you have to do hard things. Like tell a player to pack his bags, you're going to Cincinnati, or being able to look at Ryan Kelly and say, hey, man, we love you. Thanks for playing here for 10 years, but we are not going to extend you. You cannot be emotional and do those things, right? Or I guess you can. It just makes those things so much tougher, okay? And when it comes to Chris Ballard, I mean, I do like that quote from him, but the issue is he's the same guy. It's like he is Chris Ballard, and we've seen the same thing from him for the last 8 years. He can talk about how it's his responsibility. He can talk about, how it falls on him and on his shoulders. He can go on and on and on about all that stuff. But until he actually does things to actually admit those things, for example, when he goes out and he actually signs a free agent, I will start to believe, okay, maybe he does realize his deficiencies, because it's been 8 years of us rinsing and repeating, falling just short of the playoffs, him standing up and being like, we're close. I like our guys, all that kind of stuff, which to his credit, he has not said. He has not said at all. And it's honestly pretty incredible. Apparently, one of the reporters asked Chris Ballard today if, the reason why the Colts were such a bad tackling team was because of a lack of talent. And Chris Ballard responded apparently with, it could be, which is as close as a yes, I messed up as you're going to get from Chris Ballard. Okay. There's just a lot of issues on this team, a lot of them because of Chris Ballard and his inability to properly evaluate the roster, which he admitted to, by the way. Oh, it's just incredible. Just the amount of bullcrap that he's selling. Once again, I'm not going to believe a thing that he says this year until he actually makes some changes. Geez. It's just, it's so brutal. So brutal listening to all this stuff going. Jen asking me how the bingo card's going. Jen, I don't really know because I'm only able to pull specific quotes. I'll probably go back during the Dan Dockett show and actually watch the whole thing from start to finish and pull clips as it goes, and then I'll cross off my bingo card as it goes. But so far, I've only crossed off I'm disappointed. I can cross off I need to be better because he's already said that. So, we've crossed off 2 of the 24 spaces. We'll see how that winds up going. But Chris Ballard, just continuing to be the BS artist that he is. So once again, as more quotes from Chris Ballard, more audio clips continue to come out from Chris Ballard talking about this previous season and how it's all his fault, because we all knew that he was going to fall on the sword today, but probably give in some interesting comments, hopefully, throughout the rest of the thing. So far, we've just got that one clip. As more stuff comes out, if you want to tag me in it, feel free to do so. at __ Jonathan Smith. That way we can get it up here on the air for all of the people to hear. Here in about 10 minutes, Zack Gray is going to join the show as he does every Friday. We're going to talk about all sorts of stuff. It's going to be an absolute blast. We'll talk Texas, Ohio State tonight. He's got some NFL stuff that he wants to get off his chest. The Colts are targeting the former Bengals defensive coordinator. Zach is from Cincinnati. He is a Bengals fan, so I'm going to get his thoughts on Lou Anarumo, the former Bengals defensive coordinator who's set to interview with the Indianapolis Colts to be the new defensive coordinator, a guy that, based off of reputation, I wouldn't mind having. But, if you've seen the way that the national media views Chris Ballard, you would know that, reputation doesn't tell the full story. So far, the biggest thing with that Ballard press conference is the fact that he's admitting to having not added anything to the roster. But once again, we don't believe a thing he says until he actually does something. The NFL playoffs, the place where the Indianapolis Colts desperately want to be. They are set to start up tomorrow at 4:30. Chargers, Texans. I'm going to quickly give you my picks. We'll head to break and we'll come back with the one and only Zack Gray. Chargers, Texans. I'm going to take the Chargers because they have the better coach, quarterback, and they're just healthier than Houston is. The Houston Texans have got to be sitting back, listening to Chris Ballard talk and just eating this thing alive. They have to just be absolutely loving this, which, I find, which, makes sense because they're probably just looking around this division and they're like, what sucks? The Colts, the Titans, and the Jags. It makes their lives down there in Houston way easier, but I do think that they lose tomorrow. Steelers, Ravens. Give me the Ravens because they have Lamar Jackson and the Steelers do not. At some point, Lamar Jackson is going to figure it out and he's going to play well in the playoffs. So give me the Ravens there. Broncos play the Bills. I don't think I need to explain this very, very much. Give me the Bills. It's Josh Allen playing the best football of his career. Broncos, nice story. Congratulations on making the playoffs. Sean Payton has done an excellent job. Bo Nix is good, but they just aren't the Bills quite yet. The Packers, they are set to play the Eagles. I'm going to take the Eagles because they have the best roster in the NFL, and they're actually going to make quite a run because they're going to have all of their week one starters start their first game of the playoffs, which is absolutely insane. It's just like that doesn't happen. So Eagles there just because they're incredibly healthy. Commanders, they play the Buccaneers. I think these two teams are carbon copies of each other. They're carbon copies of each other. They're both awesome, high-powered offenses with little to no, defensive success. Okay, so I expect that game to be really high scoring. Give me the Buccaneers. Baker Mayfield's actually played in a playoff game before. And then we got Vikings, Rams. This is the one upset that I'm taking. Give me the Rams in Glendale, Arizona. Hopefully everyone out in LA is doing all right. If you've got family out there, I certainly hope that they are okay. The Rams have a better quarterback than Minnesota, more big game experience than Minnesota. I feel bad for Minnesota because, you go 14-3 and you got to go on the road in the first round. It's just brutal. So great year for Minnesota. Awful draw, though. Give me Matthew Stafford and the Los Angeles Rams. As I'm scrolling through Twitter here, trying to find different stuff from Chris Ballard, guys, I'm seeing all these people buy into the Chris Ballard bullcrap. I've got one comment that says, seems like he's going to change his approach for the first time in years. Don't fall for it. Don't fall for it. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Okay. I refuse to believe anything that Chris Ballard says. It's all lip service. Okay. He's not going to follow through on anything that he says today. Do not get excited. Do not add any hope. Okay. When he actually does these things, like when he actually figures out a way to add competition in the quarterback room, you are allowed to get excited. When he goes out and he actually brings in new guys, he actually goes out and he signs free agents, then you can get excited. But until it happens, do not buy in to this load of bull crap that he is selling you right now. Okay? Seriously. I mean, it's incredible. Okay? Just he's going to bullcrap his way through this entire thing, and we're all going to look up at the end of next year, or I guess not all of us, but a lot of us will look up at the end of next year and be like, "Holy crap, we just got duped again." And I'll be like, "Oh, what a surprise! You mean the guy who could sell water to a drowning fish duped you? He sold you on a bunch of bullcrap. What a surprise!" All right, he's just it's brutal. Another quote coming out from Chris Ballard that I actually like. He was asked about the Zaire Franklin podcast, and he said, "You can't win with distractions." Jeez, who would have thought? What a groundbreaking statement from Chris Ballard. You can't win with distractions. Oh my, okay. What? Oh my gosh. Obviously. I mean, obviously. Jeez, Chris Ballard. All right. When we come back here in about 5 minutes, I have to take a break from the Chris Ballard stupidity. I'm going to bring on my smart friend, smart gambler, Zack Gray. So if you want to hit some bets in the college basketball world over the weekend, don't go anywhere. Zack Gray, he's coming up here in about 4.5 minutes with bets and thoughts on the NFL.
I think we need to continue. We've had
It's time for the real Jonathan Smith Show. This is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? It's the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. It is Friday, which means the best sports gambler I know, Zack Gray, is joined in the show. Check him out on Twitter. His Patreon is linked there. His Twitter's at ZG The Grapevine. You kind of need that if you want to check him out. His Patreon's linked in his bio where he sells tools to help you make better bets. Zach, what is going on, man?
Jay Smith, it's a wonderful Friday. I'm a little on edge. The adrenaline's pumping already. I almost shed a tear this morning watching the hype video for Ohio State, but I'm trying to keep a level head. All things considered, it's my job essentially to do that. So yeah, we're trying to maintain and stabilize here.
Is that where you want to start with this? Do we want to start with Texas and Ohio State, or would you rather start with the NFL stuff?
We can knock out Texas, Ohio State. I don't think it'll be too long of a discussion.
I don't think so either. Here's my take on the game. The best version of Texas can beat anybody. The issue is we have not seen the best version of Texas all year in terms of the expectations that we had them before the season started. They've just kind of played to the level of their competition. With that being said, I kind of hope that they play to the level of Ohio State tonight, because if they do, the game will be awesome. I'm not really expecting that from them, though, because we haven't seen them do it all year. Give me Ohio State, who's been absolutely rolling here as of late.
Yeah, and I think Texas is really good. I'm not overlooking Texas. I just think there's a glaring thing here that I don't think anyone can ignore. And even if Texas defense comes out hair on fire, shuts as much as you can shut down an offense that's been rolling like this, even if they come out and play one of their best games defensively of the season, I cannot get to a point where I can see Texas scoring enough to win the game. Like, it's just Ohio State, for all the talk about Jeremiah Smith, yada, 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 like, this game is going to be like won or lost with their defense. Like, I think we're looking at potentially a Georgia level 2021 type defense where it's like all these guys are playing on Sundays. Like,
yeah.
I just don't know if Texas is in the semifinal is finally the light bulb's finally gonna go off and go, oh, we figured it out.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that they would have to lose to a rival in order for that to happen. And Ohio State is not their rival. Sorry, that was just right there.
You're not laughing.
I know you're not. So I want to move to the NFL. I think we kind of have a similar opinion as to everyone else with Texas. Are they talented enough? Sure, but they just haven't been consistent enough for anyone to really give them much of a chance tonight. I want to ask you about, I'm going to butcher his name, so when I get it wrong, you just correct me. Lou Anarumo. You
got it.
Oh, let's go. He's the former Bengals defensive coordinator, was fired, I would argue wrongfully. So Colts are in line to interview him to be their defensive coordinator. Do you like him? What are kind of your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I mean, I like him. I wish he wasn't fired. This was his first year where there was really like the idea that his defenses stunk. I mean, we called him King Lou for years. Like, the defense was in my opinion, the number one reason that the Bengals made the Super Bowl when they did, and the reason why they beat the Chiefs when they did, and went through their defense really was the backbone of their little mini run that they had prior to these last two seasons missing the playoffs. And it, at the end of the day, and like, this was kind of what I was telling you off air. It's like, he is a casualty of war. And what I mean by that is the firings that you see where the head coach stays and these coordinators and all of these position coaches get fired, to me, that screams hot seat without saying hot seat.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm very interested to see what happens with the Bengals, because I don't know, they got rid of a lot of players in the offseason, and then they're like, all right, we should be as good as we were last year despite losing guys. Is that kind of what you feel like happened with the Bengals this year?
Yeah, and I don't want to make it, I mean, I'll probably use the Bengals as an example, but I think this conversation kind of applies to all of the NFL. But like, you know how I am. I want to be as smart as possible when I talk about this stuff. Like, I want other people to like be rational and logical.
Yeah.
And like, I just can't, I don't like it when, the first thing that a fan base does or someone does is blame the coach when there's clearly other glaring issues that are, organizational top to bottom problems. So for example, the Bengals, and I think you could probably use the Colts in this example as well. They go into this season, they look at this roster, and there weren't as many questions, but there were still questions. And they go into this season, okay, this is enough. This is enough to do it. All right. And I wouldn't think that. I didn't think that, but that's what they thought. Now, it clearly wasn't. They started out terrible, 4-8. They get to the trade deadline. And they look at the roster, they look at the results midway through the season, and still say this is good enough, and don't make a move to try to get over the top, win a game more or two than you would originally. Like, to me, that's an organizational problem, because you're telling me to my face that you're committed to do anything to win, that you're gonna take the extra steps, you're gonna win in the margins, not only on the field but in the front office, and then your actions do the complete opposite of that. So that, to me, that's not a coach's problem. And you can say, oh, well, the coach had the players and they underachieved. You have, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, yada, yada, yada. And my answer to that is, like, Jay Smith, this too. Like, I don't think any NFL coach is like, no, don't sign good players. Like, yeah. I don't want good players. I don't want good depth. Like, of course that's what they want, but they're tied into the constraints of the owner and the GM at the end of the day. And teams complain about their coaches when they've never made any moves in the draft to trade up and get a guy that really fits a need, or they've never made that splash trade at the deadline to kind of get them over the top, or they spend on free agency, or they get rid of the best safety in the league to say they're going to sign their receivers and they still don't have a deal. Like, that's not the coach's fault. And I think we see that across the NFL, where we blame coaches for that stuff. And like, when I think of coaching, right? When I think of coaching, I think of, when I turn the TV on Sunday, do the guys look focused? Is there a plan? Like, is there a clear plan, whether it's working or not? Are they playing hard? Is the effort given no matter what the situation is? Are they saying things unprompted about how much they like their coach, how much they like playing for? That's coaching to me, because at the end of the day, the attitude inside the locker room is a direct reflection of the leadership that they have. And whether it's winning or losing, and especially if you're losing, if you see a team that's playing hard, that has a clear, concise game plan, like I said, whether it's working or not, you're doing a good job as a coach. And people don't seem to understand that part.
Dude, I am with you entirely. Joined by Zack Gray, professional sports gambler. Follow him on Twitter at ZG. The Grapevine, you can check out his Patreon, where he sells tools to help you make better bets. Dude, I'm with you. I've just had to sit here and read comments and quotes and find clips of Chris Ballard, the Colts GM here in Indianapolis, sell us a whole bunch of bull crap. Zach, let me ask you a question, man. If you go 9-8, okay, and you bring back the exact same roster from the year prior, what do you think that team's record should be?
Yeah, I mean, slightly worse or slightly better, around the same.
Somewhere around 9-8. I just had to sit here and pull this audio of Chris Ballard being like, you know what? It was a mistake to bring everybody back. I thought we would be way better, and we weren't. It's like, oh, who would have thought? And I'm with you, because, like, we say this a lot about every really professional sport. It all starts at the top with owners and then GMs. And I'm entirely with you in terms of coaches, because, like, my thing, I really like Shane Steichen. Look, don't get me wrong, like, he's made some mistakes here this year. Like, he made a couple bad play calls. For the most part, though, I think he's a smart guy. I think players like him, I'm not really sure. But, like, they have much bigger issues than just who the coach is. Like, if you don't have good players, which when you look at the Colts, they do not, the Bengals have a few awesome players, and then what I would argue outside of that, like pretty average to below average guys. Like you aren't making the playoffs with that, even if you have Joe Burrow playing arguably the best football of his career.
The Bengals specifically, like people think that just because we have these great players at the top, that should mean that the coach should win. And it's like you look and no disrespect to Josh Newton, but Josh Newton is not an NFL caliber player. He's not. I would be shocked if Josh Newton plays 3 more years in the NFL. And in a game that we had to win at the end of the season, he was the one covering the George Pickens, their number 1 receiver. Like that is not on the coach. And you know what else is funny? And I know it's kind of the opposite for Steichen, but for Zach Taylor, and then like I said, I'm going to reference the Bengals because I'm passionate about the Bengals. So I'm sorry if I'm keeping this, not as relatable. But I think this applies to every single time this kind of happens in the NFL. I think this is the general sentiment among fan bases. But like we look at all of the bad stuff that we look at the 4-8, and then we don't realize that 4-8 at the bottom, rock bottom. This team is close to spiraling. That same coach kept pushing, got his players ready to go, and then won 5 straight games to put themselves back in a position. Like, do we not? We think the coach had everything to do with the losing, and then when they win a bunch of games, he has nothing to do with it. Like, And my thing is too is like I don't think fans, some fans that think this way, it's just so easy to do. And I think we had this conversation earlier in the year. It's just so easy. It's the first thing that you can hang on to. You don't really know how to dig deeper and you don't really know what to look for. So it's an easy target, right? But that's what I'm saying. When I'm explaining this to people, like I've explained this exact concept to people and they still just close their eyes and go, la, 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 and don't listen. And it's like, do you think that Zack Taylor is a bad, and they'll say like Zack Taylor's a bad play caller. I don't know, whatever. And it's like, okay, well, why did their offense look so good? Like, it's like,
yeah, that's a great question.
It's just like stuff like that. And I look at coaching as, like I said, that the locker room stuff, the effort stuff, the game plan stuff. And then you can obviously make your case about coaches with their clock management and things like that, but there's a whole lot that goes into it. And especially at the NFL level, you have to work with what you're given. And when you're given some of the worst depth in the NFL, you're not going to succeed. And, you're the idea that another thing too, that I brought up was last year, Burrow goes down and Jake Browning is awesome. And like, that's not Zack Taylor's. That Zack Taylor didn't do anything there. That was all Jake Browning just playing well. It's just kind of all ludicrous. It's ludicrous, and you can apply this throughout the entire NFL. When it comes to this, fan bases in general are just. I just wish we were a little smarter as a whole when we talked about this stuff, and I know you feel the same way.
Yeah, like coaching is clearly important. Like but at the same time, it is about the players. Like it is. Like the reason why, like I don't know. I guess we can talk about this if you want to, but. I think the Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl because I think they have more good players than everybody else. And like, it's a lot of times, like it's really that simple. Like obviously Andy Reid has an impact, usually more positive than negative, but like the reason why the Lions are awesome, like isn't because like it is in part because of Dan Campbell, but it's also because Jared Goff's really good at football. And so is Jahmyr Gibbs. And so is that offensive line and so on and so forth. And we the greatness of Dan Campbell and the fact that they've got 12 defenders, on IR, and yet they're still awesome defensively in a game that they need to win. I think the Lions this year are an excellent example of your point where it is predominantly about players, but it is, partially the coach's job to get backups in depth ready to go. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I think we know they have all these good players. We've seen the production because they're in an environment that gives them the chance to do that. And I think you can look at a lot of teams where, like the Bengals, where it's like these guys are clearly in a position to do that. They're playing hard together. It's like they're playing for the coach. Like, how many times have we seen, oh my gosh, this team is really talented, but can't get it together. Like, they can't play well. They're not playing well together. There's arguments. There's that, like, that's when I feel like we can start having conversations about a coaching change. Or when, for example, when you go into a big game and you can't win it and the team looks discombobulated, that is a direct reflection of the coach not getting the team ready to play. Like that, I know that is super, super granular and specific, but that's really coaching, is getting your guys in the best position to succeed and getting them to play hard. And like, if both of those boxes are checked and it's still not working out, we have to look somewhere else.
Yeah, I'm completely with you. I meant to ask you this.
Do you think Zach Taylor was just put on the hot seat with that? Because I do. I think it's very clear.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Usually when they're firing everyone around you but you, it's kind of like the Sirianni thing from last year. They made him fire his coordinators. He didn't even hire his offensive and defensive coordinator this year. It was like, hey man, like, you better figure this out really fast. Yeah, I'm with you. I was going to ask you though. Usually we start this off with me asking you for bets. Do you have any today? If not, oh good.
Yeah.
Oh, let's go.
There's not a spread big enough that I wouldn't take Ohio State tonight. So I'll leave it there.
Do we want to mark it up? Should I move it up? The last time I checked, it was at 5.5. What's the highest?
That's what I got it at. I literally don't care if you take a minus 13.5. Like I love this. I don't see Texas scoring, and I don't see Ohio State's offense just getting completely shut down.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it. I do want to commend you. You were the first person that I know to hop on the Notre Dame is good enough to win the whole thing train, and they're gonna have a chance. And I'm not a Notre Dame guy. I think a large part of it is I was not a Brian Kelly guy. Still am not.
Yeah.
I think something that I noticed last night, and I made this comparison earlier, and I'd love your thoughts on it. Marcus Freeman reminds me a lot of Dan Campbell, former player that played a really physical position. He played linebacker. Dan Campbell played tight end. I think you can see the physicality and the toughness that Marcus Freeman has kind of helped instill in Notre Dame. I think he's very passionate. He's a little more tame than Dan Campbell, but I still think that you can see the passion. You can see how much he really cares about his players. And he's just a really good coach. And he's done this just incredible job taking Notre Dame from a very good program to one of the best in all of college football.
Yeah, and I don't like Notre Dame either. I just felt like I hate them really, like, and I don't hate them, but like I am not a Notre Dame guy at all. I sports hate them, but there were just a lot of signs that I saw. Like every week they were just rolling teams, man. Like they were, like we thought Army was all right, and they rolled them. Like we thought there were teams on their like I know they had the last game against USC where they gave up some points, but every week they were controlling and dominating the game from the very beginning. And it just looked like they figured out who they were, and they weren't going to try to do anything more than what they can do. And like we were talking about coaching, and like that's it, right? Like, that you can't do certain things, your limitations. Well, you know what? We're going to be the best at what we can do at all times. And that's what they did last night. Now, I will say last night was like which quarterback is going to stink less was going to win the game. Because I really do think both of those teams are basically even. If you traded jerseys, I wouldn't be able to tell you who's who.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things, man, where they know how they want to play. And I think you saw that stark difference in the final score, because you saw Penn State and they were, at times they kind of seemed unsure of what they wanted to do and who they were. And the whole time Notre Dame kind of stayed the course with what they do well. And I think that was the small difference in the margins, right? Like there were times where Penn State looked unorganized or, weren't doing what was working. And Notre Dame just said, you know what, this is who we are, and we're going to keep plugging away.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I thought that the biggest difference was Notre Dame's receivers made 3 or 4 plays. Meanwhile, Penn State's receivers had 0 receptions, which is incredible. Like if Drew Aller wasn't throwing it to Tyler Warren, it was not going to be completed. And Drew Aller was bad. Like the last interception was terrible. With that being said, like I don't think it's entirely on him because like the Penn State receivers they couldn't get open. That was the thing that I noticed.
Yeah, but at the same time, like I feel like they tried too many. Like their rushing attack in the first half was on point, and like I think in the third quarter they had only 5 carries, and it's like they got away from it. They got a little tight. You thought they were about to seize control though, and take the game away, and then they just, again, the identity issues, the lack of production from the receivers came to light, and you saw what you saw. But it's just one of those things where Penn State doesn't. They've been saying they've needed receivers since I've been like 2 years old. Like that's all. Like it's insane.
Well, they went to the land of wide receivers, Ohio State, in the transfer portal, and it did not matter.
It didn't. And and Penn State, boy, I would hate to be a Penn State fan.
Yeah, how do you, it's rough. And
I don't take them seriously at all.
Like, I don't either.
All.
And like, I really want to, like, I kind of like, I like James Franklin as a coach, because I think it's really like he won 9 games at Vanderbilt, which I think everyone would agree sounds impossible. And that's in one season, not in like two seasons. And so like, there's a part of me that's like, if you win 9 games at Vanderbilt, like you have to be just an awesome head coach. And then we just see him, he's 1-15 now against top 5 teams, which is incredible.
Yeah. And I think you've kind of, at what point do you say this is what we are? This is what, we have enough data now to say this is who we are. And we've tried several ways to get to that next level. Our talent's there. We have awesome players up and down the board. Like I always am hesitant to do this, but at what point now with the data that we have, do you have to say, okay, we have a decision to make. We can either just be this, or we can try and tear it down to build it back up. But I don't think that's going to happen. Penn State made the playoffs for the first time in the playoff era. Got all the way to the semifinals. So there's reasons to be optimistic, but it's just the same old thing every time, no matter the situation. And I'm sure that's frustrating.
It is. My one thing about, like, if you wanted to move on from James Franklin, I've got one guy that they could go hire, but outside of that, like, I don't know who you hire that's better than James Franklin. That's kind of the issue.
Yeah. And that's always like the thing that I default to, but I'm starting to think like there's always someone out there that's good, that's willing to coach a team like that. You obviously have to do your due diligence and make the right hire, but I think there's always going to be someone at a Penn State, at an Ohio State, at a Notre Dame, things like that. I think there's always going to be coaches that can get the job done. It's just on the administration and the athletic directors to make the right hire, but that's not always a given, clearly, and that's a risk.
2 more questions for you, Zach, and I'll let you go. Is it the offensive or defensive coordinator of Notre Dame that played tight end at Penn State?
Is it not Al Golden, or did he coach it?
I think it's Al Golden. Let me check, because like that's the guy that I would go hire. Just because I think that, I think he played it. I think it's Al Golden, because I just think that it's Al Golden. I just think it's important to know who you are, kind of like what we've been talking about Notre Dame, and obviously that entire staff does, and identity and knowing what you're good at. Like, it's hard to be good at football or any sport if you don't know what you're great at.
Or try to be something that you're not.
Yeah, I think you're, exactly right. Last thing for you, Zach. Actually, no. 2 things. Who do you have winning the Lombardi this year?
Oh, boy. This year feels like I have no idea.
Yeah.
I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm going to say the Chiefs.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
I kind of perked up. I was like, is he going to go Rams? Because I sneaky love the Rams. But
I can't get the Vikings out of my head. I know that's not smart, but they just keep popping back in my head and like, whoa, if they do this and they got this, but no, I'm done doubting, or I'm done ever doubting the Chiefs until they show me. So give me a Chiefs. That's not the sexiest pick, but like, why would I? What do I have that says that I'm wrong right now? Like they're the 1 seed, they have the bye, they have the best quarterback, their defense is bananas, they have the best coach. Like, what are we doing?
I think my most interesting stat for the NFL playoffs is that the Philadelphia Eagles are going to start all 22 players in their first playoff game that started week 1. That's
impressive.
That's insane.
That's really impressive.
That's absurd because everyone gets hurt in the NFL. But yeah, so that would be a good pick just because they're really healthy. Last thing for you, do my Arkansas Razorbacks have any chance at beating Florida tomorrow?
No.
Yeah, I know. I just one time I'd like for you to say maybe.
Calipari might be cooked.
Yeah, I know. The more I watch them, I'm just like, geez, this is brutal. But at the same time,
Now
they beat Michigan, who's arguably the best team in the Big Ten, and I'm just like, I don't know.
Now the thing is like I convinced myself that Calipari and Kentucky had just gotten to the point where both needed a change, and like Calipari still had it. He should probably, I don't know, man. It's kind of weird. I think he might be cooked, and we might not have. He might not be coaching too much longer.
Yeah, he sounds kind of cuckoo whenever he does his post game pressers. It's not great. Zach, thanks for your time, man. I don't know who I'm rooting for tonight. Probably Ohio State because I can't stand Texas.
Yeah, go Bucks, and we'll have a little national championship preview, I'm sure.
Oh, no doubt. Thanks for your time, man.
Yep, see ya.
That is Zack Gray. Follow him on Twitter at ZG The Grapevine. Check out his Patreon where he sells tools to help you make better bets. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, more audio of Chris Ballard during his press conference.
Unfiltered takes live here. The Real Jonathan Smith Show. This is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on in the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket? Hopefully you're having a nice week. Happy Friday. Oh, man. Chris Ballard doing the Chris Ballard thing where he just spouts nonsense for an hour. That's what we got today during that Chris Ballard press conference. With that being said, the audio that I've heard, seems like things might be going in the right direction. I don't really believe it, but we'll see. Chris Ballard was asked about the decision to run it back with basically the identical roster, and here is what he had to say about it.
Good question. Here's where the hardest thing to do is evaluate your own team. I think this is across the board in the NFL. And look, I'm emotional and I care about our players. And I think sometimes I've let that bleed into how I built the team. All right. And coming off a year last year when we were 9-8, I thought we were playing really good football at the end of the season. You know, lost a tough game at the end to Houston. Could have gone either way. And I'm thinking, okay, we're trending up. And instead of really creating competition throughout and throwing new blood into the locker room, new players into the locker room, I said, you know what, we're going to run it back. That was a mistake. It was. I think Buckner said it. Buckner had some comments that I thought were just excellent, where about complacency, about ego, and he's right. Buck is right. Man enough to say it, one, which I love, and two, his assessment was right, and that falls on me. It does. I bet on that we could bring players back, and they would be as upset about what happened at the end of the season last year that they'd want to rectify it. And at the end of the day, we were not able to. And I didn't do a good enough job creating enough competition throughout the roster and keep everybody on edge. Look,
Chris Ballard right there. Explain to you why he didn't do a good enough job. Well, you didn't do your job. Okay. General manager's number one job is to evaluate his own roster and figure out how to make it better. If evaluating your own roster is incredibly difficult, then you probably should not be a general manager. He said he was too emotional and just all of that bull crap. No other way to really describe it. I mean, just total and utter bull crap. You shouldn't be a general manager if you can't make decisions, if you can't evaluate your own team. Like you should not be a general manager if that's the case. I love the movie Moneyball. And one of the things about that movie that I like is how they talk about how, you know, the general manager of the A's wouldn't fly on the plane with the players. He didn't interact with them at all because he didn't want to become emotionally attached. That way, if he had to trade them, send them down, cut them, do whatever, he could actually do it and not feel bad about it. Chris Ballard apparently needs to do the same thing. Forget relationships, man. No relationships with players. Be tough. Be stern. Get ready to cut dudes, trade dudes, do whatever you need to do to make that happen. And Chris Ballard just is not. He's just not tough. He's just not tough. He's too emotional, and that is a major, major issue. He was also asked a little bit about Anthony Richardson and kind of how they need to hold him accountable going forward.
And I we're at a point where we shouldn't, going forward, like we don't need to hold any hands. Like now it's time to, all right, you understand the standard. We've gone through the growing pains. You've made mistakes. Okay. Now, much like myself, you got to learn from those mistakes and you got to grow from them. We know where he works. You know, we know the people he works with, and we're in constant communication with him. But he's got to go to work. And I think he will.
Chris Ballard right there talking about Anthony Richardson. I'm glad you don't have to hold his hand anymore. So glad that you don't have to hold Anthony Richardson's hand anymore. He's only a grown man who's been out of college for 2 years now. I remember when I moved up here, I had no one holding my hand. And, like this just part of growing up. You have to throw people into the fire. The fact that he didn't, understand the standard as soon as he showed up, that is a major issue. That is a major indictment on Shane Steichen and his coaching staff and the rest of the organization. Okay. The standard should have been set from day one. It should have been absolutely apparent from day one what the standard was. And the fact that Steichen and the rest of his staff couldn't lay that out for Anthony Richardson, that is a major, major issue. It's one of the many, many issues with this Indianapolis Colts or organization. With that being said, Chris Ballard also announced that they're going to bring in another quarterback to hopefully spark a competition between him and Anthony Richardson. That will be a good thing for Anthony Richardson because competition makes you better. It always does. Okay. So Chris Ballard right there talking about Anthony Richardson. Ballard also aired it out saying that they aren't close. And he also discussed free agency just a little bit. Here's Chris Ballard talking about those topics.
I think we need to continue. We've had moments where we've brought outside free agents in and done really good with it. We've got to be better about making sure we identify the right free agents that can help push this team to where it needs to go. Right now, we're not close. I'm going to make this really clear. Like, we are like close as losing on the last play of the Super Bowl. That's close. Going 8-9, that's not close. No. I'm not saying we won't be closer when we get to the start of the season, but right now, sitting here today, we're an 8-9 football team. We got to own that, and we are not good enough. We're not. And we've got to be able to address and identify the right avenues to acquire the right players that can move the needle. And I have not done that in the last 4 years.
Chris Ballard right there talking about how they aren't close and how they need to get better and free agency and all that kind of stuff. Look, it's 8 years of this, 8 years of the Colts falling short, not meeting the goals that were set before them, not meeting the expectations that Chris Ballard set before them, right? Going 9-8, going 8-9, missing the playoffs, not winning the division, so on and so forth. And then we reach this point of the year and we get to talk about where we get to listen to Chris Ballard talk about all the mistakes that he made. It's just year after year after year of the exact same thing over and over and over again. I didn't do this right. I didn't blame. It's a bunch of the same bull crap. It's just on repeat. And it's really annoying to listen to. I'm really sick of Chris Ballard. As more audio and stuff comes out from the Chris Ballard press conference, I will continue to play it right here on the Real Jonathan Smith Show. We'll get it up and running on the Dan Dockett Show as well. I have no faith whatsoever, but Chris Ballard does have an opportunity to change that. Okay. If Chris Ballard actually follows through, okay. If Chris Ballard, actually goes out and he actually signs a legitimate free agent that's going to be able to come in and play. Heath Har, great comment on the YouTube stream saying that he heard Aaron Rodgers was looking at houses around Indianapolis. Seriously, like that's probably going to be the competition for Anthony Richardson. It'd be great competition though. Like it seriously would. Like, Aaron Rodgers shows up and it's like, geez, like I better be awesome, right? Because it's Aaron Rodgers. And so, yeah, like I don't really expect anything. Okay. I've got no expectations. I think the Colts are going to suck. I think they're going to go 5-12 next year. Maybe by the time the season rolls around, I talk myself into 8-9, but they're going to be bad. They're going to lose a lot of games. It's going to be because of Chris Ballard. And it's the least surprising thing ever. When we come back here in about 4 minutes or so, I'm going to keep looking for more Chris Ballard audio. If I find more stuff, then we're going to play it. If not, I'm going to run through my fun list Friday, which is Chris Ballard centered. So make sure you stick around for that. It's all coming your way here in 4 minutes.
The best takes. The real Jonathan Smith Show. This is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? It's Indy Sports Ticket here on 1430 AM. Hopefully you're having a nice day. Happy Friday. Hopefully Chris Ballard's constant, just bull crap statements didn't ruin your day. They haven't ruined mine. Not quite yet. Still, find an audio, keeping it rolling in here as we continue to talk about Chris Ballard and all the nonsense that he spewed throughout his press conference today. I mean, it's just 8 years of the same stuff, 8 years of the Colts falling short, and Chris Ballard listing off all of the reasons why, and yet for some reason we are still yet to make any sort of change. So Chris Ballard, made an attempt to lay it all out. Hopefully no one believes him. No one should believe him because he's never done anything to back up his statements, okay? Do not get excited until, he actually goes out and signs a real free agent. Don't get excited until he goes out and he actually addresses the tight end position. Apparently he was asked about that today, and he said that they needed to get a tight end. I guess he hinted at Tyler Warren. I don't know. I'll go through the whole press conference here a bit later, but it's been brutal. Really, the entire Chris Ballard era has been brutal. So I put together this Funless Friday where I kind of ranked the 10 best draft picks under Chris Ballard. Okay. The top three, any order: Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman Jr., and Quentin Nelson. I think those are the three best picks Chris Ballard has made. Okay. 4 through 8 kind of guys that are solid, but that's really it. Josh Downs, Bernard Raymond, really hard to find a starting offensive tackle that can actually play in the third round. Kwity Paye, solid player, not great. Dayo Dangbo, solid player, not great. And then Will Fries, a 7th round pick, who's a pretty good right guard. And then the last two, 9 and 10, filling it out, are Shaq Leonard and Zaire Franklin. And when you look at all these picks, you'll notice something. Only 2 of them were first-round picks. When you build only through the NFL draft, you cannot miss on that many first-round picks. You can't do it, okay? If you miss on 3 first-round picks, really 4 because Kwity Paye's fine, then you just aren't going to be a good team at all. It's not going to happen. Leatu Latu, he might be good. We'll see. Anthony Richardson doesn't look great. If he was great, they would not be bringing in another quarterback, but maybe. We'll see if Chris Ballard actually does it to push him. Kwity Paye, solid player, but not a franchise changer. Quentin Nelson, great player at a position that doesn't really matter. And Malik Hooker was awful. That's why the Colts didn't extend him. That's why he's not here anymore. Going 1 for 5 on drafting dominant first-round players isn't good. Okay? He's drafted 1 great player in Quentin Nelson, 1 decent player in Kwity Paye, and then a guy in Leatu Latu who might wind up being good. Your first-round draft record cannot be that terrible if you're going to rebuild through the draft. Or, well, it can. You just have to use free agency to supplement the missed draft picks. And Chris Ballard doesn't do that. And the other thing is, it's really hard to draft good players consistently. If you only use the draft to rebuild, you're playing with the hand tied behind your back. I don't care what Chris Ballard said today. I don't think he's going to use free agency. Okay, he said it, which is really nice to hear. Okay, I'm glad that he talked about it. I'm glad that he brought it up and said that they need to bring more competition into the building, and they need to do all these different things. It's not enough. It's not. It's not enough. Okay, I need to see him actually do these things, and I have zero faith whatsoever in him to actually do it. Right, this is year 8 of falling short of expectations, and then listening to Chris Ballard tell us how badly he messed up, and then, just going through it once again. At some point, probably not, but at some point, Jim Irsay is going to be like, he keeps telling me all the reasons why he sucks. Why don't I fire him? Seriously, because that's what the press conference was today. It was him saying everything that he did wrong for an hour. He had an hour's worth of time to sit back and say, I did all of these things incorrectly. Okay, I really hope that the Indianapolis Colts pull a Chicago Bears. Probably like, Jonathan, what are you talking about? Chicago Bears lost a game, had Matt Eberflus stand up at the podium, defend his job, and then like an hour later, the Bears were like, hey, man, you're fired. I really hope that that's what Jim Irsay does. I hope he listened to this press conference with the right state of mind. I hope he listened to it, heard everything that Chris Ballard said, because none of the issues over the last 8 years have been fixed. And I hope he's like, I hope that the thing clicked. I hope the light bulb went off for Jim Irsay. He was like, you know what? These are the same issues I had 6, 7, 8 years ago when Chris Ballard was here. It's probably time for him to leave. And it's not going to happen. But I really wish that it would. We got a big weekend of sports. Texas, Ohio State tonight. Everybody and their mother is taking Ohio State, which, if you want to go with the sack man way of thinking, that means that you take Texas tonight. But I don't know. Very hard to ignore how dominant Ohio State has been. Purdue, they're playing this weekend. They're playing against Nebraska Sunday. That'll be a good game. Indiana, they play Iowa tomorrow night. That game should be, fun to watch. Iowa really good at scoring the basketball. Let's see what else we got going on. Pacers, they host the Warriors tonight. If you aren't doing anything tonight and you need to pick me up, right? You need to feel better after listening to those horrendously awful Chris Ballard quotes. You should take your money. You should buy a ticket to go watch the Pacers tonight, just so you can watch Steph Curry play basketball. It is one of the most unique experiences you will ever have watching someone play basketball. It is incredible. No way around it. If you love basketball, you need to go watch that guy play. It's incredible. Just the way that he plays ball. So Pacers, they host the Warriors tonight. They're looking to keep rolling. I just can't wait. There's just a lot of awesome stuff going on in the sports world over the weekend. We got playoff games. Those are going to be a blast. I'm going to fill out my Chris Ballard bingo card over the course of Dan's show. I'm going to go back and listen to a lot of what Chris Ballard had to say. And I'm hopefully going to have bingo at least twice. The tone that he took today during the press conference was a little more humble than what I was expecting. We all know that, he's very arrogant, doesn't like to admit when he's wrong. He actually did that today. We'll see if he actually makes the adjustments, though, because I don't think that he will. Like, why would we trust Chris Ballard to make any sort of change after 8 years of the exact same thing? Just rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. Okay, I have a hard time. Heath Hart, fantastic observation. Pacers Warriors tonight also features Thomas Bryant taking on Trace Jackson Davis, two Indiana basketball legends. Their names are etched in the history books forever. I'm glad Dan's not on. If Dan heard me say that, he probably did. He's probably plugged in. He's probably just going to roll his eyes at that comment. But this is the place to be all day long for thoughts on Chris Ballard and everything that he had to say today. As more audio comes out, as I continue to pull it, we're going to have that on the Dan Dockett Show, which is set to go coming up here at noon. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to listen to my show. If you want more from me, I've got a YouTube channel, Shooting the Schmidt, if you want to go and check that out. It's stuff outside of Indy because I have opinions on a lot of things. So here in about 5 minutes, the Dan Dockett Show will get underway. I will talk to you again on Monday about all sorts of stuff. I will talk to you then.